Hello and welcome to today's Courage Talk on takethecourage.com. My today's guest is Natalia Monnard. She is CEO and co-founder of Skin Zero, an all-natural cosmetic startup. Who she is and what's her story, you're going to hear in a short while. Natalia, welcome to the talk today and thanks for joining me.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this chat with you.
Thank you. You are somewhere in the mountains today, yeah? You told me.
Yes. I'm lucky enough to be sitting here in Selfmade, and actually today is sunny, so I'm sorry to make you jealous that you are in gray Zurich, but I'm in blue Selfmade today, so that's very nice.
Good for you, good for you. I'm really sitting in gray, but as long as our hearts are not gray and black.
Correct. Sunshine from within.
Exactly, and that's what life is about, no?
Yes, indeed.
Let's start right away with your story. So, if okay for you.
For sure.
Who are you and which is your story?
So I'm Natalia Monnard. My friends call me Nats, so feel free to call me that if you feel comfortable with it.
Nats, okay.
Nats. I'm a very energetic person. If you know anything about dogs, I always say that the Jack Russell is my spirit animal because it's full of energy, always very eager to learn and need to be kept busy. I'm also a very caring person. I take really good care of the people I love, and I'm the kind of person who's there for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I also call myself a realistic optimist. My glass in general is always half full, but I try to always be aware of what's inside the glass, around the glass, under the glass, over the glass, to keep a more realistic I think in today's society, we have a lot of negativity, but we also have a lot of this toxic positivism where we minimize problems or put them to the side. And I don't think that allows us to build real sustainable solutions. And so that's a little bit who I am. And my story starts in Mexico City. I was born and raised in Mexico, where I lived until I was 27 years old. My mother is Swiss from the French side, and my father is American from Atlanta, Georgia. I was the first person in my family to go to university. I studied international relations, so I come from a humble, simple background. I started my career in human rights, mainly in poverty in Mexico, but also in war topics later on. So I volunteered in a refugee camp in Nepal in 2006 when the war was at a very high point there. So that was also a quite transformative experience for me. In 2011, I moved to Switzerland, where my plan was to do a PhD at the UN. They used to have a program. And for that, I thought, okay, I'll work for 1 year, put a bit of money to the side, and then do that. And that's how I entered what some people may call the dark side of the force, because I started working in the financial services industry. And what I thought would be for 1 year ended up being 10 years.
Wow.
So I worked in banking for 10 long years, and really great years. Never would have thought that. But what actually kept me there was that I was privileged enough to work with really inspiring, highly motivating leaders and teams. And so also my career progressed fairly quickly. In just a few years, I became the youngest chief of staff in the wealth management business, the only woman at that level. And wow. I was managing the largest business unit in the entire bank. So that was very empowering, very encouraging. And I managed to do that also because I had really fantastic team support around me. And then in 2018, I started my executive MBA at the same time as I was working. I did that at IMD. And in full transparency, one of the reasons I wanted to do that was because I was the youngest, only woman chief of staff in the bank in that business area. And sometimes the criticism or the the feeling of being judged was high and got to me. And I wanted one of the best institutions in the world, like IMD, to say, you've been certified, you're
The
good
stamp.
enough to do this. Exactly. And that's actually why I started my executive MBA, in full transparency. But as I went through that journey, which was a truly transformative one, it changed completely. I stopped caring about that completely, and it became more about, I can actually do much more. And it opened up so many possibilities. And this is actually where my entrepreneurial journey really started. Because I had worked a lot with entrepreneurs in the past, giving advice and a bit of management consultancy, etc. But the entrepreneurship bug got into me, and the executive MBA gave me maybe the courage, but also the certainty that I had the tools to do that. And that's how Skin Zero, which is my company today, started. And Skin Zero is a natural cosmetics company. I started this with one of my co-founders. We're now 3. And this started over dinner last year, August 2020. So in less than 6 months, we had a fully functioning company, all self-made. So everything from the logo, the name, the website, the product, really everything. We launched 3 products in May this year, which is what we opened with. We're going to launch 2 more products next week, actually. So that's very exciting.
Great.
And 3 more products early next year. And it's fascinating because we were able to build a value-based company with a very clear purpose. And that's, for me, a very clear definition of courage. And so that's a bit my story until now.
Until now.
Yes.
Exactly, because you mentioned on your website, I think you mentioned that you're an expert in making things happen. And I guess, or I assume that courage plays a huge role there, how you make things happen. If we go back to your story, so the way you have been raised and brought up, do you think that that contributed, in which ways did that contribute to the way who you are today? The driver, the one who, is actioning and pushing things forward?
I mean, without a doubt, don't get me wrong, I love living in Switzerland, where everything works, where everything feels very stable and it's very predictable. But Mexico was nothing like that. And I think growing up in Mexico prepares you more for these kind of challenges, for uncertainty, for also creative solutions, and coming up with new ideas and new ways of solving everyday challenges, because life is a bit more challenging in these kind of countries. So definitely, I also think the multicultural aspect of it helps you widen your alternatives, your diversity. So definitely a big impact. And I have always had a bias for action since I was a little kid. So I was the typical kid who wanted to do everything and always saying, okay, now we're going to do this, and organizing the other. So from a very, very young age, that kind of showed there. And during my executive MBA, I had one of the coaches that was working with me who was actually fantastic. So this coach during my executive MBA, she told me, you are an expert in making things happen. And that really stuck with me. She told me, you are an activator, and this is your own superpower, and you have to harness it. And that has stayed with me ever since. And so when I started Skin Zero, that was always in the back of my mind, of course. And because courage is the basis of activation, right? Like every time you take action, you take risk. And every time you take a risk, you need courage. So without it, you don't have it. So yeah, definitely a very important role in my life.
Okay. And in the corporate environment where you were, as you say, the youngest chief of staff, and you had to prove yourself, how did you have to really be courageous? And if yes, in which ways?
For sure. I mean, the corporate environment requires maybe courage in a different way than entrepreneurship. because entrepreneurship is a lot about you and what you're doing and your mission. But corporate is about somebody else's mission. So you're doing things from somebody else. And that courage then comes from a different place, because purpose already gives you such a solid basis for courage. So definitely different. Already being a woman in the financial services industry requires a certain amount of courage. It is still a very heavily male dominated industry. And if you have, or you are a woman with opinions, it's not always. But like I said, I was very lucky to have mentors and a team environment that allowed me that gave me a voice, that allowed me to speak up, but also to listen. Managers that wanted to teach me and that took the time to do that. So yes, you had to be courageous, but I have to admit that I also had a lot of support and people I could lean on and believed in me, sometimes even before I believed in myself. So that's definitely very powerful and helped me in my corporate career.
Okay. So that was the way you experienced it yourself. So you were encouraged by others as well. You had the support of others. In which ways was courage generally lived and lived in that kind of environment, would you say? Where did you see courage being lived and where rather not, or being prevented?
Yeah, this is a tough question because again, my experience in corporate was very defined by who I was working for and with. And I think the leader has a huge role in shaping that, because there's a corporate culture and then you have a team culture. And that team culture, if it's the right one, although the corporate culture may not be the right one, it will help you thrive. So when I worked in teams where leadership was like that, I never felt like I was not encouraged to be courageous, if I can say it that way, to speak up, to lead, to have an opinion, to take action. I actually even had a boss that once told me, making you chief of staff was a calculated risk because I knew you would succeed. And that's, again, very empowering. But I have to admit that I also worked in teams where that was not the case, where leaders didn't walk the talk. And that's, for me, a very dangerous environment. So when a leader says, I don't want to have any yaysayers in my team, I want people who challenge constructively, but then you're not allowed to have a different opinion, or the answer to everything you bring up is, I know better, then that's a very toxic culture where there were points where I asked myself, what's the point on being courageous? Because even if I speak up, I'm being shut down. And that was not a very healthy team environment. I also didn't like it. I didn't thrive in this kind of environments. I was not able to be my best version of myself. I think both of those worlds really exist in the big corporate world, for better or for worse, despite the fact that there's key characteristics of big corporate, but you still have these kind of different team cultures.
Sure. So certainly. So we can't generalize it. It's really depending on the leaders. Yeah.
My experience was like that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to you. So, and on your LinkedIn profile, beside your name and title CEO and co-founder, you add changing what if for what's next. I like that. So, in which ways do you think do we need courage in order to achieve that shift from the if? There are so many ifs around in the world. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, life is all about asking yourself the right questions. And I'm not saying what if is not a valid question. I think what if can help you. But if the only question you ask yourself, what if, it is what if, it will force you to think only about what can go wrong and what will be the obstacles and what will not work. And it is important to have that in mind when you're doing a plan, but that cannot be the focus of whatever next step you're taking. So that's what I mean with changing what if for what's next, because what's next on the other side has two angles. One is the big picture visionary, what's next, what's my North Star kind of thing. But also once you've defined that North Star, what's next? What's the next little step? And it forces you to have an action plan, move forward, take a step. And that really takes you to that North Star. If you only stand in front of your North Star and say, what if this, what if that, you'll get nowhere. At least with what's next, you will take the steps forward. It doesn't mean that you'll get there, but it means that you will move forward, and that when you look back, there's something to look back at. So I don't ask myself, what if anymore? I ask myself, what's next? And I take the next step forward.
That's very good. It takes this bigger muscle of courage to put in place this bigger vision and the bigger what's next. And then we need all those little muscles of courage on the way to set up those next steps, the what's next, and then we achieve where we want to be. So I like the what's next.
Thank you.
If you wanted to kind of summarize, what does courage look like in your role as an entrepreneur and leader?
Mm-hmm. I mean, every entrepreneur needs courage. It takes courage to quit your day job. It takes courage to build a business. It takes courage to stay flexible, pivot. I think it's fair to say that without courage, there will be no entrepreneurship. But courage looks different, at least for me, every day. And I think that's true for moms, dads, corporate citizens, kids, for everybody. Courage can look different on a daily basis. In my entrepreneurship role, sometimes courage means reaching out to a complete stranger and trying to sell them my vision, my mission with Skin Zero, and without knowing if that will resonate with them at all. And that can be scary, but it takes courage to do that. Sometimes it's about standing in front of the camera and filming a video about how to apply the deodorant and putting it out there on the social media. And that can also be daunting because you're exposing yourself. But more often than not, courage means accepting your own vulnerability and letting go of your ego, asking for help, accepting you don't have all the answers and you will not know better every single time, taking on feedback and allowing it to make you better and not bitter, listening to others and surrounding yourself with people who will tell you different. And with all of that, still take action and still take steps forwards. That's, I think, what courage looks like for me.
Wow. A lot of occasions where you can train your courage muscles. Do you experience it as sometimes as very scary, or in which topics is it kind of rather scary?
You know, it's strange because I think as an entrepreneur, people expect you to be courageous. It comes with the job. Like if you are not courageous, you ain't gonna make it. And funny enough, it does become with time, as you say, courage is a muscle and you train it. Yeah, I think because you practice courage so often and you use that courage muscle so often, it becomes second nature and part of your DNA, really. Yeah, so definitely courage comes with the package and you have to exercise it every single day. And although I think I'm a person who has gone or had to develop that courage muscle throughout my journey, not only in entrepreneurship, but in general, I do believe entrepreneurship has developed it in a different way and is the big courage muscle, but also the little courage muscles that I was not aware of, or things that I found daunting that I never thought I would, like this whole putting myself out there on social media. Because the truth is that today we are more exposed than ever. And we live in a society that judges you harshly. And social media allows them to do that. And so that can be a bit scary sometimes, but it's the name of the game.
Is the name of the game. And you are doing it very well. I like your
Thank
presence
you.
in social media. Is there something which you kind of do every day on a regular basis that makes you a better, a more courageous entrepreneur and leader?
Oh, how I wish there was a magic little thing that I could do every single day to make me be my courageous self every single time. Unfortunately, at least for me, that's not how it works. And my courage comes from very different things on different days. I do have some mandatory things, which are, I'm a big fan of breaks, so I cannot go one entire day working. I force myself to have breaks, and that's something absolutely, it's scheduled in my agenda, it's there, and I don't skip them. But that is rather for my mental health than for my courage. My sources of courage are different. Very often it's a very clear purpose. So for me in the Skin Zero space, that's easy because I've been a user of natural cosmetics for over 8 years. I'm so convinced that this industry needs to stop intoxicating people. And so convinced that there are ways to do that in an effective, with products that are actually truly effective, that source of courage is constantly there. But sometimes it can also be someone needing you. Like I'm thinking my experience in the refugee camp in Nepal. I mean, I was young-ish, on the other side of the world. I had never lived through war. Why am I going all the way to Nepal? And where is that courage, if you can say it so, coming from? But I felt someone needed me and I could do something for someone else. And that's also a very powerful source of courage.
Certainly, yeah.
And finally, I'd say I also have those days where I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this to myself? I'm working like a crazy person for no certainty. Why? And there I'm very lucky to also have people like my partner, who he is the greatest source of peace for me. And if I can recommend anything to anyone trying to do something in entrepreneurship, is find your person. It doesn't need to be your partner, it can be your friend, it can be your father, your son, your whomever, but a source of peace for you, because you will need that. And he's that for me. So that courage also comes from there sometimes, because he's the one who reminds me, Nats, you were born to do this, get it together, you can do it. And it's okay, yes, you're right. And it's very powerful as well.
Yeah. It's this topic of is courage internal or external? You know, I think courage is both.
Yes.
It comes from, it comes from within, the purpose, why am I doing it? But it comes from the external world. If we didn't have all those people around us who do help us to go through the hassles and hard times, I think a lot of us would have it difficult and wouldn't achieve what we wanted to achieve.
I could not agree more with you. And and at different times it's triggered from either inside or outside, and you have to find that sources of courage. And it's the same, doesn't work the same way every single time, which is beautiful, because it means you can have a different day and still have a source of courage.
Exactly. And those are those nice lessons anyway. I mean, they can't be always the same. So those are the nice challenges and the nice lessons of life, which we then, within which we grow and we thrive and we move forward.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So courage can be mobilized differently. And as we talked before about it, there's external, internal courage. Nevertheless, a lot of people really struggle of mobilizing their courage. If you wanted to give them an advice, or as of your experience, what has really helped to mobilize courage when needed?
I think that purpose for me has been a complete game changer. And I see it when I was in corporate versus now that I am an entrepreneur. That source of courage internally is different, because finding reasons to stand up for something you believe in or are convinced is way easier than trying to find reasons to stand up for something that is not yours, that you are not fully in control of, that is not your mission in life, or you don't deeply believe in. So finding something that is close to your heart and you are convinced of will already be a great source of courage and significantly help you train that muscle, as you say. For me, it all starts there. And the second way is really, again, going back to what question do you ask yourself in the morning? Are you going to ask yourself, what if? Or are you going to ask yourself, what's next? And so, because what we ask ourselves, what we tell ourselves is so powerful. And starting with the right question will take you to the right answer. So it's not only about being kind to yourself and believing in yourself, but it's about how do you frame that dialogue with yourself. And it all starts with that question. So get up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what's next? And once you have the answer, that will be your source of courage.
It's nice. I'll take out of this interview certainly the what's next with me.
Very good.
I like that. So let's get back to your story. So when did you last face up a real challenge whereby you really had to mobilize your courage? So what happened and how did you do it?
I mean, as an entrepreneur, I have so many moments where I need to mobilize my courage. But maybe, I mean, as we were saying, sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, people expect you to be that courageous entrepreneur or have that courage already within you. So if you allow me, I'm not going to use the last time I had to use my courage, but I'll try to exemplify this with an example of my life during my corporate career. And at that time, I was leading a part of a very, very large project within the bank. And in the end, the project didn't go where we wanted it to go. And it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to turn out. And as that happened, most senior people went into save your neck kind of mode and pointing fingers, blaming others, trying to find reasons or excuses why this didn't work. And at that point, I had that choice of going in the same kind of mode, which I think was fairly easy. Everybody else was doing it, so why not? Or saying, hey, wait a minute, is there something that we can learn here? What is my part in this? Can this be a lesson instead of an excuse? And I decided to go for that second option. I stood up for my team. We did an evaluation where we tried to understand what we did wrong and how we could have done it better. So we took accountability. And ultimately, and sadly enough, we were left alone to fight a battle that was not only ours, but we just stood there. And it had some implications, even in my annual performance review. But when I look back, I feel so good about myself. I look back and I stayed true to who I was, grew and learned something out of this experience, which I don't think a lot of people did. And I can look back and say, I did the right thing. And the cost of not having done that would have been so much higher than any annual performance review I'll ever have in my life. So 0 regrets, but at the time, tough. And I do think that was one of these big courageous moments in my life, in my corporate career, because it would have been easy to just say, I don't know.
Play the same game.
I was just doing my job. I did as you told me, and I don't know. But what would have been the point of that? I mean, so many months working on something and you don't even learn something, and it's really just a waste of time.
Wow. Well done.
Thank you.
That's exactly, courage is to live your values, and courage is to go along with what's right over what's quick and, the way it is. And especially when you say, you stand here now today and you look back and you say, wow, such a good feeling. I did the right thing.
Yes. Yes.
And certainly a lesson learned for hopefully also your environment. I'm not sure. Hopefully some of those see you or they saw you at that time as a role model.
I'm not sure, and I hope so. But if not, I learned so much, and I grew from that experience. And it has shaped also who I am as a leader, as a boss, also the example I wanted to give my team. So that was already worth it.
Cool. So do you have a courage role model, somebody who encourages you and does motivate you on your way?
I have many, and they all play very different roles at different times of my life, right? From my brother, who is now battling a very tough illness, to my 94-year-old grandmother, who still drives to pick me up from the train station, my co-founders who are in this journey with me and betting on this mission with me, my mentors who still lend me an ear from time to time and when I need it, and again, and my partner so thankfully I'm blessed to have a lot of inspiring, encouraging, and reliable people in my life. I am very aware that I would not be able to do what I'm doing without them. And I feel very grateful. And I also know that not everybody has that in their life. So it sounds wrong, but I use them as a tool for also my success, because it's one of my resources. So I don't take it for granted, and it's a big privilege.
That's nice.
Yes, I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate.
Let's talk about the future. So what does the future hold on for you and your business? And in which ways are you or will you be mobilizing courage in order to move forward?
I'm super excited about the future. So because at Skin Zero, we are on a mission, and together with my two co-founders, Dolores Brici and Sarah Payne, we want to transform an industry that has let us down as consumers. And we want to help people make healthier decisions about what they put on their skin by providing them with products that give them outstanding results with zero nasties. So none of this crap that you put on your skin when you put some of the products we buy on stores. This mission also includes fostering more transparency, because the more I learn about this industry, the more appalled I am about what you are able to do by just having a small print somewhere. So we have zero points, no asterisks, no hidden messages, and we want to help educate our consumer by providing them with as much information as we have. So if you go to our website, you'll see that we have an entire section on the ingredients we use and why we use them, but also a very large one on the ingredients we refuse to use and why we don't use them. So it's a lot about education, which I find absolutely fascinating. And one of the really beautiful things about this mission is that the transformation in this industry, in the beauty and personal care industry, is a consumer-led transformation. So the regulator is catching up. It's not the regulator saying, this is not a good ingredient, we're going to stop this. It's also not technology leading the change or new ingredients. It's the consumer saying, hey, enough, please stop poisoning me and give me products that work, but don't jeopardize my health and that one of my family. So that is so empowering, and it makes the future ever more exciting because the consumer already gets it. And the truth is also that at times it can be quite daunting because this is a huge industry and it has a lot of economic interests. It is well established, it has been out there for many, many years. There's a lot of deals being made in this industry. So it can be a little bit scary sometimes, but at Skin Zero, we take courage of that very clear purpose and the feedback from our clients that have seen an improvement in their skin, in how their skin looks and feels when using our products. This, along with the support of our loved ones and the people who are there for us, is what we need in order to change our what ifs for what's next.
Well said. So this shift to the next is, I think, our kind of the word from this interview. What advice would you like to give to entrepreneurs, to those who want to set up their own businesses, founders, to those who want to move forward courageously? What do you want to give them on their way? I'm not going to say female founders, because I saw your last post in LinkedIn, which I even printed out, where you cross out the female. I'm a founder is not about, you know, and what did you say? I'm going to read it out to you. Or do you want to say that? Where you said, I like for female entrepreneurs to become something extraordinary. Do you want to say one sentence on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was for me shocking I come from a very male dominated industry, so it shouldn't be so shocking. But when I started as an entrepreneur, I got a lot of calls or people who wanted to interview me because I was a female entrepreneur, and all questions were about me being female. Nothing about my business or my product or how I to succeed or what was my business plan. It was just about me being female. And I'm so tired of this question. And I do believe that there's so much to be done still in this space, and we need to encourage females to do and be more out there. But let's stop making it about us being women. Why does that matter? Do we ever ask a man, how is it for you being a man in entrepreneurship? No. So why do you need to ask me that question? Please be interested in what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, not my gender. So yeah. I don't like being called a female entrepreneur. Please don't get me wrong. We're underrepresented. We need more female entrepreneurs. Let's just not make it the center of the conversation.
Exactly. I love that. And I love that post. Then you're right, you know. Why do we do that? So therefore, the advice is in general for all entrepreneurs, for all founders who want to move forward courageously. What would that advice be?
Yeah, I mean, be brave enough to speak up and to stand up, and humble enough to listen, because success will be a lot about taking action, a lot about listening, and have a clear purpose. Just building a business for the sake of building a business is a lot of work, and your sources of courage will be limited. So find your purpose and stay true to who you are, because for me, the success of an entrepreneur comes with two things. Courage, for sure. Courage will take you to that action, but resilience. And resilience is that one thing fueled by courage that will help you stay in the race. And those two are easier to source if you're clear on your purpose. So start there.
And choose the what's next.
And ask yourself the right question every morning. No what ifs, only what's next.
With that in mind, that was my last question for the talk. Thank you so much. I love your drive and energy and the way you follow your purpose. And I wish you, your team much success, and also courage to go through those tough times and make it happen.
Thank you so very much for listening to me and for also spreading this important message about courage. I think we sometimes need to be reminded that it is a muscle and you can train it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Let's be in touch, and absolutely, all the best.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.